You are now listening to the Going North podcast with your host, author and speaker, Dom Brightman. And every Monday and Thursday, you're going to hear the voice of a different author share their stories, expertise, and their struggles that they had to overcome in life to leave you inspired to get more out of your life. Be sure to not only listen to this episode, but share with others, connect with the authors, and always advance others to advance yourself. Now let's get on with the show. It's gratitude time, next round. And next up on this round of gratitude, it's gonna be a wonderful lady that I worked with at one point. I gotta tell you, this woman right here, she is a total package right here. She is a total package, I gotta tell you. A librarian who rides motorcycles, lifts weights, and she's freaking gorgeous to boot. Like, wow, she's like the total package. And she wrote a book too, so I gotta tell you, thank you so much for your review, Victory. I appreciate you. I appreciate you a lot. And it's just really great to know you as a fellow human being who loves personal development and had the honor of working with you before you got promoted. And I just want to say thank you so much for your review and your support. And for those who want to get to know the wonderful Victory a lot more, head over to episode 120.5, the local author bonus special with the Children of Time. She's a fellow author, and she's got a great book, and she's got a great series that's going to be released over the next few months, and is going to be freaking fabulous. If you're into great books in the fiction category, this is the lady to check out right here. So going out there, check out that episode, check out her books, and be sure to continue to check out and support local authors. Victory, thank you so much for all of your help and being a wonderful human being, as well as being a fellow believer in the good Lord Jesus Christ. And today on the Going North podcast, we're back at you again with another author. But not just any author. We got a superstar author in the building, baby. That's right. Not only a superstar author, she's also a coach. And I got to tell you, I'm really impressed with this lady right here because she's been all over the globe, and she's been on TV, she's been on radio, she's been featured on Oprah Magazine, The Today Show, Bravo, Cosmopolitan, The Huffington Post, and a whole Noah's Ark full of other media appearances. And there's no 2x2 for that reference in terms of the Going North podcast. Well, heck, let's go with it. She's going to add that to her wonderful arc of appearances because she's got this awesome book coming out at the end of this year called The Superstar Paradox. And you're probably wondering who this wonderful person I got on the podcast today. It is the one, the only, Keren Eldad. How are you today, ma'am?
I'm very well, Dom. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Oh, yes, indeed. Glad to have you on the show. You're one heck of an interesting lady. It's like, listen to some of your stuff before the phone call this morning, and it's like, wow, it's like you speak 5 languages, and you've actually been on the planet longer than I thought you'd been on the planet.
Thank you. You know, I'm the Pete Buttigieg of coaching. It's very exciting. Thanks.
Oh, man. Yes, indeed. What was it, the Pete protege?
You know, Pete Buttigieg, the candidate that everybody's obsessed with because he speaks 7 languages, apparently. And he's a veteran, and he went to Harvard, and he's just like a perfect all-arounder.
Ah, there we go.
I find those personalities great because I mean, I like the profile a lot. It serves me very well, but also I think it kind of stands in stark contrast to the times where a lot of people are just kind of meritless. And it is very important, I think, to take yourself seriously and try to do as much as you can. Not to sound like a an elitist or anything like that. I couldn't be farther from it, but it's kind of nice, and I really appreciate your acknowledgement. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure indeed. I think you're probably the first guest that actually knows 5 different languages. I think the closest we have is probably a guy named Andres Valdez. He speaks about 3 or 4.
Yeah.
He's an American diplomat.
Listen,
so.
anything over 3. Yeah, exactly. Anything over 3 is a polyglot, so it's very impressive and super cool.
That's right. So if someone pokes one of your fingers, they you just speak a random language, I guess, right?
Well, owl sounds the same in Hebrew, just so you know.
Okay.
It's the same word.
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
probably backtracking a bit, so how did you get to where you currently are today with all of your experience? Because you've been in Hollywood, now you're in New York, and you got 2 fluffy cats, and got this new book coming out. Who is Keren Eldad, Miss K.E.?
Well, thank you, Dom. You know, you did mention that I've been on the planet longer than perhaps I look, and that's great. That's awesome. Every woman in the world wants to hear that. That's a compliment. It's a great story because none of us really end up, I think, where we want to end up or in a life that is purposeful or meaningful without real strife. So it sounds great, right? Like the resume has, my personal resume has Ivy League education and very exciting growing around the world because I was a diplomat kid and lots of privilege and lots of wonderful, happy things. But that doesn't really doesn't particularly inform. What happened was that, I mean, and especially if you were to look at me or meet me at a cocktail party, you could never tell what I've been through. And this is the story, I think, of most people. Most people are so complex and so interesting. And if you really get to hear their stories, very few people's lives are just monotonous or read without any strife. It's just, I've never seen a case like that anyway. And in my case, you wouldn't have known that I ended up in an abusive relationship and living in a country that I really just did not want to live in. And I felt massively trapped, the kind of trap that a lot of people feel in a bad marriage, in a career that really doesn't feel good to them or doesn't feel authentic to them, and in a life that you almost feel like you're on the outside looking in, which is something that I hear very regularly from my superstar clients. And it's a funny thing, that's really the observation that drew me to start thinking of what I call the superstar paradox, which is when all of the achievements are overt success that you can see, right? Because we can measure it, because we look very good on Instagram, and all of that nonsense really actually feels very, very bad to us. So in my case, this is just a few years ago, I was married to a guy that I from the onset did not love. I thought, he's tall, he's got great hair, and as you know, Dom, those are very important things, and that's why you should marry something like this. And I didn't take into consideration that the personality type that he had was massively insecure, completely incompatible with me. And that's not to say that I wasn't massively insecure, otherwise I wouldn't have attracted that. But I definitely walked into a relationship that was horrible feeling. And luckily I was in that relationship because it was so bad that I had to get out. And when I did get out of that relationship, when I went to a divorce, a lot of other systems started to collapse. I was living in Switzerland, which is a really lovely country, but totally, for a New Yorker, not at all ideal. Like, everything closes at 6 o'clock, which is madness. And restaurants empty out at like 9 p.m., which is completely bananas. And Dom, can you believe it? Their shops are closed on Sundays. So it's like dead in the street. So for a New Yorker, this was a harrowing experience. So I'm living in this foreign country that I don't particularly like, with a person I really, really didn't like, in a very uncomfortable position, because I made a big life transition to live there, and everything just felt awful. And here I am, mid-30s. I've done everything right? I've done everything right. I went to the right schools. I got the right jobs. I married the right guy, and I'm absolutely miserable. And that's when I started to ask big questions. This is also when, I got to tell you, I started to consider that which before that I really felt was inconsiderable, and that is the world of self-help. Because for a lot of people who are overachievers, first, they don't think that they need any help,
Yep.
or that therapy's bullshit, coaching is even more snake oil bullshit, and I know so much, and I've gotten so much, and I'm so successful that I don't need this crap. But I really did finally reach for a book, and I remember the first foray was Stephen R. Covey's huge bestseller, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Have you ever read it?
Oh yeah, that book. Yeah, that's a legendary one. Nice and thick too.
Nice and thick, nice and dense. It should be called The 49 Habits of Highly Effective People because it's not 7, but it's a very, very intense book. And I remember reading it and just starting to see things differently. That's what coaching really does, right? It doesn't alternate the facts. It doesn't alter the facts, but it really gives you different goggles with which to view them. And I saw my whole life differently, and everything started to change from there. And this began a journey to first falling in love with myself and finding my life again, but second, to learning that I really want to do this for everybody else, which was a revelation to me, and a complete transformation of my career at almost 40. And here we are.
Woohoo! Well, glad you're here, in more ways than one. In more ways
Thank
than
you.
one.
Amen.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yeah, so back to the hustle and bustle of New York City. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. I resisted for a long time, but I kind of feel like I belong here. At least for now. At least for now.
Yeah, that's true, too, because, I mean, we're all human becomings, right? I mean, we're not going to be the same as we were like 5 or 10 years ago. At least I hope not.
No, we're really not. And you know, it's funny. I have to tell you something. I really believe that what you just said is extraordinarily important. We are all human becomings. When I tell my story, a lot of people say, oh my gosh, you're so brave, and to start over, and at almost 40, and all of that. And I keep looking at people thinking, you're all going to have to go through that. We are living in a time of unprecedented global change, right? We are, whether we like it or not, going to have to adapt to new careers at 40 and at 50. Just statistically speaking, and that's not just if you're a millennial, like almost nobody gets to sail into the sunset anymore.
Nope.
And I think that understanding that we are a human becoming, that we can't rely on what we know anymore, we can't rely on that comfort level, is critical, and critical to your thriving, not to your surviving. It's critical to your happiness.
Ah, well said indeed, well said indeed.
That's why your podcast is really kind of a metaphor for the time. Think about it. They're in the personal life who's experiencing change.
That's right. And not just quarters, nickels, and dimes either.
Yeah, truly.
And this all led to the upcoming book, The Superstar Paradox. So I'm guessing your powerful story is what led to this book, right?
Yeah, pretty much, but not really. The truth is I didn't really connect the dots. It's funny. I'm sure you've noticed. Don't you feel like that you understand your own story much more intensely by looking at other people's stories or listening to other people's stories?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's kind of what the whole point is, right? Like, why else would I tell my story other than pure narcissism if I didn't feel like it was completely resonated with someone else out there? So first, here's what started to happen. I coach a lot of people who are absolutely breathtaking, marvelous human beings. The vast majority of them are what I would call superstars. And what I mean by superstar is not amazing education and super rich and good looking. What I mean by that is resourceful, high achieving, hardworking, really intense personalities, right? They're what we would call type A, or psychology would probably classify as type A versus type B, right?
Right, the hard chargers.
Yeah, the high chargers. And I was expecting to find burnout, but instead I didn't find burnout. I found a relentless pursuit, like an overworked drive that had to come from somewhere. And then as you got to know them a little bit better, you started to realize that many of them suffered from anxiety. And then as you started to get to know them a little bit better, you saw that many of them suffered from terrible insecurity, like incredible status complexes. And that's when you started to understand that This is what's gotten us. This is what's tripped us up. We were basically all making preferences that were not really our preferences, and we were pushing so hard to get those preferences because we believe that that's what we should do. That's how we define ourselves. That's how high achievers define themselves. This is where I started to come up with the superstar paradox, because it really connected all of the dots for me. The method is still the method. Everybody has to go through a full cleansing and coaching period at the end. But this was kind of the missing link. I started to understand that there's this natural lack, this intense self-worth issue that's happening. And that's sort of what framed the paradox for me. And this is when I started to understand, okay, this is our connecting thread right here. It's nothing, I think, particularly breathtaking, but because, of course, there's a lot of work that's been dedicated to self-acceptance versus narcissism in literature over the years. But I think that it resonates very strongly because of the particular segment of society that I'm kind of looking at, or where it's more intense.
Oh yeah, especially nowadays where everything has to be so fast.
Well, yeah, Instagram has definitely exacerbated the problem. You're seeing this, I mean, the superstar paradox applies in spades to younger generations, and they don't particularly have to be affluent for that.
Mm-hmm.
They're bombarded constantly by how they should live from people that they've never met who have an outfit for every hour. And this, it does. If you've read Jonathan Haidt's The Coddling of the American Mind, it really, really messes you up to be constantly responding to that. And you feel a deep, deep dissatisfaction in addition to the erosion of community and stuff. So it's massively applicable. The superstar paradox today is really a general paradox. It's becoming worse and worse. It's also what's happening with the class that is suffering enormously from globalization and whose jobs are becoming increasingly irrelevant. I'm just going to give you an example from the last election because they were so glorified. The coal miners, which is, whether you like it or not, about to disappear from the world. And they're also suffering from the exact same thing because technically speaking, these people did do the right thing all their lives, right? Mm-hmm. They followed a course that they thought was safe, that they thought was the way that you should live your life. And here they are having to redefine absolutely everything. They've locked themselves into patterns of thinking that's really ended up biting them in the ass. For lack of a better term. Yeah.
But yeah, you're right though about that. It's like, yeah, it's like a traditional method, like it's true, just stay a certain path and then you'll find success, but that's not always that case, especially nowadays with that. It's like, oh my goodness, like, no.
Yeah, nowadays it's not going to work. But think about what really the ramifications are. The reasons that we're talking about this is not just because we want people to adapt to new careers and to be happy. It's because it's actually killing people. I am a very seasoned suicide counselor with Crisis Text Line, and the statistics are extremely grim. In fact, 2/3 of gun-inflicted deaths in the United States are white males who simply cannot deal with the enormous catharsis of our times, and they can't deal with ridicule or with the pain and shame of having to change your life. This is the real going north story. Like, if you look at the crux, change involves having to really look at yourself and open yourself up and tell people that you're making a change. You know, Dom, what was the most difficult part of my transition?
What would that be?
It wasn't the divorce, which sucked. It wasn't when I had to move countries and then put my stuff in storage and then it burned down, so I lost all my things. The 4 things that I got to keep after that divorce, incidentally. It wasn't the grief along the way. What really, really was difficult was the humility and the humiliation. And I take these terms very lightly, but you feel them in the moment, of having to sleep on friends' couches and having to reinvent a career when I was a grown-up who had a career behind them, and having to ask friends for a loan and having to really weather what is a big storm in life. These are big, take a deep gulp, suck it up moments in life, and not a lot of people can stomach that, and that's what we teach you to do because it's a critical important part of life, and it should be easier for everybody.
And yeah, in the moment, that probably did feel sucky because it's like, yeah, you're known as the gal who had it all. You finally
Oh, yeah.
had the holy grail, metaphorically speaking. It's like, yeah, and then out of nowhere, you just crash happens. You divorce from the person who you thought you really wanted, then you just lose basically all your stuff. It's like that's gotta really suck.
It really did suck. And you know what sucked also was when I started to tell people, all right, no, I'm moving back. Yeah, I'm doing this now. And actually, no, I really want to start a new career. And then I started posting all of my videos. I have a YouTube channel where I talk to people about being happy and of following their dreams and changing their lives. And everybody thought I was out of my freaking mind. In fact, my old boss called me and asked me if I wanted my job back. And another friend called me and asked me if I needed some money. Like humiliating, sad, felt so bad for me stuff. And I stuck with it because I sort of started to understand that in this life we have one shot to really make this count, and you might as well have some fun around here.
That's right, some fun on the bun. And I'm guessing that's what led to you starting the company with enthusiasm?
Mhm. That is what started to change everything. And I figured out how to be happy, how to be financially independent, how to transform the way I looked at things, and how to go through stuff like this. And I wanted absolutely everybody else to feel it. The first thing I did wasn't really found with enthusiasm, Dom. The first thing I did was join Crisis Text Line as a volunteer suicide counselor.
Oh.
And I started to, like all coaches, become completely obsessed with this stuff. Like I've heard so many people's stories where instead of taking like one coaching program, you take 26. And you run the gamut from like Tony Robbins to, I don't know, anybody who resonates with you, you will pay a lot of money to go through. And that's when you start to understand you have a little bit of an obsession. And that's when I kind of stumbled upon a new career and launched with enthusiasm, which was a method just for people like me, high achievers who have like a little bit of an Achilles heel in a certain area.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Nobody's undefeated. Nobody.
No. No. Mental wellness spares no one, and most of us are raised to believe that we can achieve our way through life, but that doesn't take anxiety or pain away. It actually exacerbates it. Instead of starting to learn how to be happy and be grateful and be productive and be resourceful, which are the only things that will really carry you through.
Well said right there, indeed. Well said right there. So any advice for those who may be going through that right now and they may need to like detox, may need to just chill out for a moment? Any advice for those out there who may be going through that moment where they charge so darn hard and it's like, oh shoot, Matt, you know what, let me catch some Z's right here. No, I gotta finish these 300,000 emails to respond to.
Yeah, I'd love to answer that question. First, I want you to know out there that if you're going through something difficult, it's okay. I feel for you. Every single person on this planet has been through some version of this, and you all are going to be okay. It's a horrible and hard thing to go through. However, if you can just remember that you will be okay, that this is a question of time, and I speak to people who are going through grief and trauma. This is a question of time. It is finite. You will feel just a little bit calmer, a little bit more soothed. You may find just a peace in knowing that it is finite. It's like this morning I was at my sister's. My sister just had a baby, and we're Jewish, so the baby had a bris. It's a circumcision. And it was extremely painful to watch this poor little baby go through that horrific thing. But in 2 days, it will be completely done, and he won't feel a thing. And he's definitely not going to remember any of this. And that's very comforting to me in the moment. And if that at all can help you, that's very, very important. The second thing I can say, Dom, is try to change the story. If there's any way that you can rewrite your current circumstance in a way that doesn't make you the victim, but gives you some of your power back, you will actually make it through this. Meaning, for example, let's say that, I remember back when I was going through all of this and the fire, Dom, believe it or not, both my cats died. and I don't have any children, so losing 2 cats was horrific. Horrific. Anybody who has a pet understands that. And they both died, like one died and the other one died of grief 2 weeks later. So it was like super dramatic. And I remember when I was going through that and thinking I was so sad and I was really, really in a process of grief. But at some point I did realize that for better or worse, they were handing me a fresh start. And for better or worse, they had an incredible life. They had a wonderful, rich life. They didn't completely disappear for nothing. And they gave my life so much while they were here. And I know that that's comforting. And that would be comforting for anyone going through a grief process because it's the same story. They're still dead. However, you can sort of try to soothe yourself. If you can soothe yourself through this process, and this is why I offer this, even though it's very difficult during a time of transition, is if you can find the place where you can soothe yourself, you can find the place where you can slowly but surely begin again. And every moment offers you an opportunity to begin again. If you need to rest, no problem. Take your time. My process took years. Brene Brown's process took years. It's just the way it is. But know that you can do it by just telling yourself a story that helps you heal rather than makes you suffer enormously. Is that helpful?
Oh, yeah. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You can do it. With a Campbell soup can, you can do it. That's right.
Absolutely. I love that.
Woo! Awesome indeed. Awesome indeed. Well, the beautiful thing about this is the fact that you're already like so swamped with stuff and helping out folks all over the world that you're going to be starting your own podcast in June.
I am. The Coach Podcast, where I answer questions from callers. But that's for personal reasons. You know why I did that? I mean, first of all, I love a call-in show, and I really miss them. And now that we have podcasts, we listen to interviews all the time, and I thought it would be kind of different. But I'm also a huge Frasier fan. Are you familiar with the TV show Frasier?
Oh, I'm familiar with it, just never watched it.
I'm a weird, like, nerdy, obsessed Frasier fan. And I thought it would be really cool to do something that was like Frasier. So that's what the podcast is going to be like.
Nice. So I'm guessing there's going to be a topic for the day. You're going to choose a topic, or just going to talk for like 5 minutes and then see what happens as folks call in and see, all right.
No, not really. We're going to try to do themed shows. So for now, we're really going to cover all of the topics that are very, very relevant to people, like stress at work, a situation in which you're not being heard and how you can have influence, or how to reinvent your story if you do have to start over again, or what do you do when you're broke? Which is something that a lot of people are very, very, very interested in and can be transformed, believe it or not.
I mean, heck, you're living proof of that, right?
I am living proof of that. Everybody goes through a broke phase. I really do believe it. And if you haven't, I highly recommend it because it makes you really appreciate money. It's a wonderful thing to go through, not a bad thing to go through. It's incredible to teach yourself how very diligent you are and how to manage money. And I'd love to talk about that, too. It's an important topic, Dom. Everybody wants to talk about money and sex. That's just the way it is.
It's true indeed. It's true indeed. Money, it's like, yeah, you need that as to actually survive. So it's like, yep, money management's always a requirement.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, money is, I always say that money is the most obvious one. You wake up with money, you go to sleep with money. I mean, it shouldn't be so taboo. We really do need it to breathe. And if you need it to breathe, you need it to live, you need it to really follow your dreams, maximize your dreams, why not cultivate a nice, friendly relationship with it where you learn how to earn it properly and keep it properly rather than make it so taboo and be afraid of it all the time.
That's right. Acting like money has like a 2x4 in its hand, just waiting to smack you with it or something.
Yeah.
It's like, don't tell people about me.
Precisely.
This is Fight Club. Nobody talks about Fight Club.
No, it's a crazy thing to do. It's ignoring the elephant in the room. And if you look at the self-help category, by the way, I think most of the books probably fall in the prosperity category. I'm not particularly inclined to that. My clients don't usually have this much of an issue, although you'd be surprised. I even have a track called Millionaire Money Problems because that is a thing.
I believe it.
Oh, it is, and they really have an issue with money as well. But it's an important thing to talk about, and that's what we hope to cover in the show as well. Thanks for asking.
Oh, my pleasure indeed. My pleasure indeed. I think I got to mention that since I'm a podcast, got to support the fellow podcaster.
Yeah,
That's
all
right.
of us doing good work out there.
That's right. Good with 5 O's even. Yes, indeed.
Indeed. I love it.
Woo. Well, alrighty. So for yourself, if you were to wake up tomorrow and you were 25 again in the current year 2019 with all of your knowledge and experience embedded in your mind, and you're basically now in 2019 with everything you have now, what advice would you give to yourself?
I love that question. I would say 2 things. Be easy on yourself. You're doing extremely well. And I would also say have the audacity to follow your preferences. You already know what you want.
Solid advice indeed. Huh. Any idea why folks may not have the audacity to follow what they want? Because
they don't know what they want. They don't know what they want. I'll tell you, no. Deep down, they do know what they want, but they don't know it as in they don't trust it. Meaning, we are so absorbing of the opinions of others, of the inclinations of others. We are so, our tendency is to listen to our parents, to our teachers, to our surroundings, to our communities. And we absorb that and we take that in. And as a result, they shape our preferences, not we shape our preferences. Now, thank God I never became a lawyer or a doctor, which is probably my parents' preference. And I definitely didn't marry somebody at the age of 24 and learn to make banana bread. Those were not my preferences. And I knew that. Like in my heart, those were very firm preferences. At the same time, corporate job and this kind of education and working so hard and just working within the confines of societal dictates certainly did mute my preferences or cloud my preferences. And so I didn't really follow them. I remember being very young and seeking some kind of spotlight, but I never pursued it because I thought, no, that's not really the right thing to do, and that's not what intellectual people do, and that's not how to live my life, and so on and so forth, which really just let you listen to other people's preferences rather than to your own. I am of the hope that today's generation does follow their bliss a little bit more, but I got to be honest with you, Dom, with the prevalence, the enormous prevalence of influence on social media, that's definitely probably a little murky too. So if you have the wherewithal to follow your real desires, to pursue things that really speak to you, at 25, your life will be vastly different. And if you can find good guides to help you do that, you're definitely on your way. That would be great. And again, the best part of that advice is to also be easy on yourself in the process. You're doing extremely well. Nothing needs to happen immediately. The hustle culture is bullshit. Relax, have fun. It's okay. Am I right?
Yeah. I was laughing at the last
Those of us who are a little
line.
less young, yeah, it's okay. It's all good. It's fine. Where are you running?
Just running everywhere in a giant circle, hoping to land at the goal. Like, yeah. Just running everywhere.
For what? Do you think that Roger Federer is playing for trophies? He's not. He's playing because it's fun. It's a great game. He's having a good time. He's outdoing himself. He's working with amazing opponents. He's honing and mastering. He's breaking records. I think he could care less about the trophies.
There you go. Break records. Especially if you set them yourself, too. That's even better. Freaking awesome.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say to my younger self.
Woohoo! That's
Yeah.
awesome indeed. That's awesome indeed. Yeah, that and the be easy on yourself part is like, yeah, because, I mean, folks really are trying to compete against themselves, and they be like, oh, shoot, really, this sucks. And then if they try to add on to that by trying to compete with others, too, it's like, that'll be even more. It's like trying to carry a boulder around in a darn marathon.
I completely agree with you.
Oh, yeah.
But luckily they can listen to people like us who have done this and know and maybe. But here's the best part of this, right? You can't really say anything to a 25-year-old. I say this with enormous love, and also because 75% of our callers on Crisis Text Line are under the age of 25. But even though our words, our wonderful words, our wise words can definitely help them and inspire them and soothe them, the only thing that will teach them is life experience. And that's just the way it is. We all have to go north. We all have to go south and go north. There's just no way around it. And isn't that the beautiful thing in life? I believe, Dom, that when we die, we're not sad because, oh no, we're dying. We have no freaking idea what death holds for us. I think it's because you're so sad to miss out on the south and the north, and the south and the north. That drama that is life. That's what we came here for.
Oh, yeah. The good drama. Not the
best drama.
That's right. Yesterday, the best drama right there. Not the crappy drama.
No, the best one. I love it.
Woohoo! Well, alrighty, for those who want to keep in magical contact with you and be updated of not only when your podcast launches, but also when you launch your book this December, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
The best way is to go to my website, which is www.kereneldad.com. That's Keren, Keren, 2 E's. I know, quirky. Eldad, ELDAD.com, and you can get freebies and sign up for stuff and keep in touch. I'd love to hear from everybody in your audience, and I thank you so much for having me on the show today, Dom. It was a real honor and a pleasure.
The pleasure's all mine, as they say. The plum-pleasing pleasure.
I love that. Oh, you're full of fantastic quips.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Didn't even have to bust out the tree joke for this one.
It's a good one. We have fun. We have fun.
Thanks a bunch for your listening ears on the Going North podcast. I hope you really, really enjoyed that episode. If you enjoyed the episode, be sure to share it with your friends and family, especially those who love podcasts and love listening to some inspiration and motivation.